This summer I stood out in the woods and I shared a video where I talked about my DSLR Instagram workflow, and it involved an iFi card. I was talking a little bit about the Mobi at a time, the Mobi from iFi, and just recently they have released their largest card to date of the Mobi. It's a 32 gigabyte card. Now I'm a little less of a fan of the Mobi than I am of the iFi Pro X card. The pros of this card is that it does the direct mode directly to a tablet or a smartphone very, very easily. You basically plug it in, there's a little activation sticker that comes with it, you type that into the app that is free on the smartphone or tablet, and it just starts flying your pictures over. Downside is you have no control over which pictures it sends over to the device. And for me, when I go out into the woods and I might take 4 or 5 real quick pictures of a fern from slightly different angles, I want to pick one of those on the camera and send it over to the device. I don't want to kill my battery life or just be bogged down with a bunch of files flying through the air. The X model lets you do a lot of different things, including direct mode. It's a little bit more work to set up, but once you have it set up, then you can say with a one button push or just a couple button push, protect this image, which then triggers the camera to send it over to your device. So I still am a little bit more of a fan of this, but it is nice that they're offering the larger sizes now. It's not the speediest card though, so I'm not sure what you're going to be doing with all of that size. You're not going to be shooting video at the higher quality and the higher end DSLRs, but I have found that the X2 card is plenty fast enough to shoot high quality video. The Mobi, not quite as fast. So one of the comments on that video though was about sending it over to my smartphone or tablet, editing it in Snapseed, and then sharing it out to Instagram. And I loved the kind of flexibility and freedom to do all that without a computer. And somebody said, well, that sounds like a lot of work. Why don't you just download the images and edit them? And I thought, well, that sounds like a lot of work. But there are times where my Instagram workflow does involve PC editing or editing on the computer. And so I thought I'd take just a few moments and show how I do that, because it will kind of touch on a couple of different things in Lightroom that I think are important that you should know how to do. So I have here just a couple of pictures out of, well, you can see 5 that I think might be fun to put up on Instagram at some point in the near future out of a recent engagement session of 246. And I've one starred, so those are just the ones I'm working with this evening. And the first thing that I do with these images is a square crop, because when they're going to go on Instagram, they're going to be square. Now there are other apps and programs that will let you sneakily get other aspect ratios up by putting big borders left and right or above and below, and I've certainly used that at times when I want to keep a certain aspect ratio or have a more panoramic look. But for most of these images, I think square crop is going to be just fine. And so I'm in the Develop module, and I'm going to get my crop tool, which is also R, and there is a preset 1:1 already. So that is our square ratio. I'm going to pull that up, and then I'm going to move it to the area that I want. And so I want a little bit of the tree, but I also want to make sure I cut off just a little, or don't cut off any of the flowing water here. So this is a 30-second image, and you can see you get really smooth water from that 30-second image. And I think that looks pretty good, so I'm going to hit Enter. I'm going to go ahead and enable profile correction. This 50 and a square crop, it's not going to change a whole lot. You can see that the edges warp in and out just a little bit. I'm going to go into my basic slider. I'm going to increase the clarity. I'm going to bring up the vibrance just a little bit and the saturation just a little bit. If you've watched my other videos, you know that I'm not a huge fan of too much saturation. I am going to see if I can warm this shot up just a little bit with the white balance slider. It looks just a little cool to me. And I'm not crazy about the kind of blue tinge to the water. And I think that that looks just a little bit nicer. It's alright. This isn't an amazing shot, but I certainly like the flow of the water, and I think this is all I want to do to this one. So we're going to leave that and move on to the next one. A dewy red maple leaf here, or a sugar maple, I'm not sure which for sure, on the grass early in the morning. So again, I'm going to, now I could actually just hit the previous button. It'll take all of the settings from the previous image that I just worked on and apply them here. So I'll go ahead and do that, previous. And you can see that the crop isn't in the right place now. Give it a second. There we go. So I can move this over here. I'm going to make this really tight. I'm not going to leave a lot of breathing room around this image because, one, I don't really want any of those brown leaves there. I should have moved them out real life photoshopping, but I didn't. So bring that in. Now, I had made the previous image warm, and that doesn't work as well with this. I want a little bit cooler because I want that green of that grass to really stand out. And now, this is where I come over to the tint and see if I move the slider a little bit to the left, get a little more green tint, or come down into the color sliders in this green I really want, because it really was a vibrant, vibrant green for so late in the year. And I think that that looks a little bit more realistic and maybe increases saturation. Just a touch of the green, but notice that I'm not increasing the saturation of the reds and yellows. I think that's pretty spot on. And the clarity back on the basic slider was already jacked up because that setting came over. I tell you, I think it still looks a little warm. So I'm going to, instead of grabbing the slider, I'm just going to put my cursor over the white balance, or sorry, the temperature number, and hit the down arrow key. And every time I do that, it drops by 5? No. Yeah, 5. And so I'm cooling it down just a little bit. There we go. I think that looks a little bit better. And so I'm happy with that. Now I'm going to move on to the next image. Almost a black and white, this little Junko that was inside the barn. I like to silhouette up against this window here. So let's get our 1:1. And let's straighten this a little bit too while we're in this crop mode. Not too much. Those windows and the angle is a little crooked, so I'm going to have to decide whether I want a straight beam or I want the window lines to be straight. And I can't quite decide, so I think I'll split the difference and go right there. And now very, very high contrast here, and so I'm just going to run with that high contrast and just increase it even more and lower the saturation a little bit of this to take some of the color out, almost end up with a black and white photo. And I really like this heavy negative space here, small bird, and then big white empty space up above. So I'm pretty happy with the way that looks. That's another thing about Instagram. I don't feel like my pictures need to be perfect. They're more of a kind of an interesting moment or an interesting scene, so it's a little bit more forgiving than a picture that I would put up on someplace like 500 pics. So I thought these flowers with these kind of like bladders were very pretty, and somebody told me the name just today and I've already forgotten. But let's go to our 1:1, and I think I really would like, oops, hit the 1:1. And I think I would really like just that flower to be sticking in on the left side of the frame. Like so. And just leave a huge amount of negative space around it. Really going to bump up the clarity, well, not too much. And I think that looks good. Now, if I was being picky, if I wanted the background to be a consistent, we're starting to see a little bit of the grass down here that's giving us a little bit of light, I could come up here to my gradient tool and I could lower the exposure on it and drag up. But you know what? We're getting a different color when we do that. There we go. If we match the white balance a little bit. And then we have just a little bit more similarity back there. Still have a little bit of texture and I'm fine with that. I really like the way the light's coming in and lighting that up. Let's see, we have some nice detail in this. Still getting a little bit of chromatic aberration around the edges. This was taken with the 70D and the 70-200 f2.8 lens. So I'm happy about that. One of the things that you need to think about, or I think is important for me when I'm thinking about, is names or captions of the image. And this one right here, I thought, Anonymous Cow. Because you know in those movies or Dateline specials where they don't want you to know who's talking, they put little black lines over their eyes so you can't see. I kind of felt like that was what was going on with this cow here. Be careful not to cut off too much of the fuzzy ears because those are pretty cute. But otherwise, I think that looks pretty good. Again, a little bit of extra clarity. I'm going to bring the exposure down just a tiny bit and increase the blacks just a little bit. No, sorry, decrease. There we go. So the cow looks truly black as it actually was. All right, so I've just quickly edited 4 images for Instagram. And now what I have done is to get them onto the phone, because there is no easy way to get them to Instagram from a computer that I know of. If you have an idea of how to easily do that, just leave a comment down below. But I'm pretty happy with this. I'm going to go to File and Export with Preset, and I have an Instagram for Reel, because I had a broken one for a while and then I deleted it and haven't renamed this one. And what this will do is, let's just hit Export, so you can see it automatically exports the images to a folder of my choosing in Dropbox. Now, if you're not using Dropbox, you really should. It's a few gigabytes for free. There is a lot of ways to get more gigabytes for free. I think I'm up to 12 gigabytes without paying anything. And I have a folder in here called Instagrams. And when I hit this export, it will automatically take these images and export them for me. Let's look here real quick. If I click here, it puts them in Dropbox/Instagrams. It renames them to date and file name. So I have that. It resizes them to fit within a 1936 by 1936 and 96 resolution. So they're a nice size. Sharpens a little bit for the screen, because these are going to be all displayed on the screen, but low amount. And that's it. Doesn't do anything else to them. So I hit that button. They automatically end up in Dropbox. And for those who don't know what Dropbox is and why I was gushing about it a minute ago, is it allows you to keep files synced across multiple devices, computers, tablets, phones, and access those files from those devices very easily. So it drops into that folder, and in a few seconds, Dropbox app that's always running on the computer slurps it up to the cloud, and then sends out those files to your devices. Now, it doesn't actually send them to a phone or a tablet, but it does let the phone or tablet know that they're there. On the phone or tablet, you can pull them up, and you can say, export out to Instagram. Or if I need to do a little bit more editing, it's unlikely, but I could export it out to Snapseed, or from Instagram, I could pull it up through Dropbox. So there's multiple ways to get it once it's on the device. So, found some photos. I edited them briefly. I exported into a Dropbox folder. And then on the device, I don't think you need to see that part if you're familiar with Instagram, I just pull up and add the photos into Instagram. And I try to do about 1 a day. I don't always manage to get 1 image a day, but that's my goal in general, to get 1 Instagram image up a day. And I was pretty proud of myself. For a few weeks ago, I had a tic-tac-toe grid that I built so that when you looked at my last 9 images in the little profile view, it played out on Instagram. I have a new idea that I'll be working on over the next couple of weeks probably. And for individual images, it's kind of like, what are those? But then when you look at them as a whole, I think it's kind of fun. So it's just a way to keep myself entertained, and that's pretty much all Instagram is. It's pretty much all any of these social networks are. If you have any questions about Instagram, Lightroom editing, or presets for exporting, you certainly should work yourself and create some presets. It's very easy to do. Once you set these settings up, and then you just click Add and give it a name, hopefully better than Instagram for Reel. And then that preset will always be there and do exactly what you want with the images, and you don't have to go into the export dialog box at all. So I think that's pretty nifty. If you would like to follow me on Instagram, the link is right down below. And as I said, if you have any questions about Instagram, Lightroom, or Dropbox, you can just, of course, leave a comment, or even better, take a moment to come over to the Facebook page and leave a comment there. I do a much better job of keeping up with all of the comments. Thanks so much for watching, and if you haven't already, please subscribe.